Thank you, Sophie. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Well, this is my first time on this stage, so you may hear me, my voice, or you may see me shaking, but bear with me, please. So, from riding in the backseat to piloting the spaceship. Sounds promising, right? I mean, who hasn't even once dreamed of becoming an astronaut when we were kids and riding to the outer space like Tom Hanks in Apollo 13, or why not Buzz Lightyear and reaching to infinity and beyond? But before we take off today, I have a little confession to make. What if I tell you that I'm almost 30 years old and I still haven't learned how to drive a car? And yet here I am, giving a speech about leaving the backseat and becoming the pilot. How funny is that, right? But don't worry, I won't be driving any cars today, so you are safe with me. But I do want to share with you Keylingo's journey, as Sophie said, and how we went from being a passive user of Plunet to an active one. So here we go. We adopted Plunet in 2014, and when I started working at Keylingo around 6 years ago, we weren't even using a quarter of its functionalities. So Plunet helped us reach our main destination and the main stops along the way. So we would create a quote, create an order, assign the project, and then deliver it. And that was it. But there were some factors that eventually led us to become more active users of Plunet. So we became ISO certified, which meant that we created a whole quality management system that we needed to maintain and measure. We created a tech and innovation team that focuses on improving efficiency and productivity, and we adopted the OKR methodology. So if this term doesn't ring a bell for you, these are O stands for objective and KR for key results. So we set collaborative goals with the whole team, and then from 3 to 5 key results that would help us achieve that goal. So all these factors also led us to start investigating some tools that would help us measure and maintain our system, that would help us improve efficiency, and also to achieve and measure our goals. And we investigated a lot of tools. We had a lot of meetings with potential providers. We participated in lots of demos. And after so many investigations, we realized that we already had a tool. Any guesses? Plunet would help us to achieve everything that we needed at that moment. So by becoming active users of Plunet, we were able to start making smart decisions. So in our data-driven decision-making process, there are 5 key steps, and 3 out of these 5 key steps are related to the data. So Plunet here plays a key role in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th step, in which we identify the data that we need to achieve our goals or to measure our goals, then to build the data collection process, and finally to analyze the data that we have collected. So today I wanted to show you which features we started using to gain a better understanding of our main stakeholders, in this case our customers and our operations center. So in the past year, we realized that there was a strategic customer that wasn't sending as many requests as before. So we had this feeling that the orders had decreased a lot. And the first thing that we did was to create a status report orders to see. And this is how it looked like. Pretty bad, right? So it was not just a feeling, it was a fact. This customer was not sending so many requests as they used to did before. So we wanted to talk to our customer about this and find out what was going on. But first, we decided to look into other reports in Plunet to better understand this customer trend before actually talking to them and asking what was going on. So we looked into, for example, the total sales to compare them to the total orders. And unfortunately, the trend was pretty much the same. We looked into the quote assignation ratio to see whether the customer was just requesting quotes and not approving them, or if they were not requesting quotes at all. We looked into the total words translated, the monthly orders, the language details, for example, the on-time deliveries, because maybe we were delivering their projects late, and that could be a reason why they wouldn't want to work with us anymore. And finally, we looked into the contact persons list. And this was a key piece of information for us to better understand what was going on with this customer. So we knew that this customer was under a huge reorganization. We know that some main contact persons had left the company. So with all of this information, we put it in a pretty nice presentation, and we carry out what we call the Keylingo business review meetings. So in these meetings, we go through all the information that we get in the report session, such as KPIs, performance, other performance indicators, volume, finance. So we go all through that information together with the customer to understand what are the new challenges and their needs. So we created tasks in Plunet, and each time we schedule a meeting with the customer, we register those tasks in the customer profile. For example, we also carry out new request meetings, that these are initiated when a customer, a regular customer, sends a request that is more complex or larger than the usual request. So we want to understand the challenges before sending a quote. And then we have the discovery meeting with prospects, that these are initiated by a prospective customer that reach out to us, and we want to introduce ourselves, introduce our services, again, before sending them a proposal. So as part of our sales objective, we realized that it was key to have this type of meetings with our customer in order to understand what they need from us. So each time we schedule a call with a customer, we register them under the task section. So let's say that we have an objective to increase sales by 10% in the first quarter of the year. And some of the key results are related to these meetings. So we want to conduct 10 meetings in each quarter that would help us increase our sales. So at the end of the quarter, then we can go to the queries and tasks section and see whether we have achieved those key results or not, whether we have conducted 8 meetings or 12 meetings maybe, and that also helps us to restructure the goal for the next quarter, for example. And coming back to this strategic customer, when we carried out this Keylingo business review meeting, we learned the reason why the orders have been decreasing. So what we did was work together on an action plan, and these are the tasks, and these are the memos that we registered in the customer profile. So now we have the whole action plan registered in the customer profile, so any project manager that go to this customer profile can see what has been done and what needs to be done. So the first task was the meeting in which we wanted to focus on the decrease. Then we received a general customer feedback, and we learned that the customer was actually satisfied with our services. So the on-time deliveries, or there were no issues on our end that were causing this decrease. And here we learned the reason, the actual reason, and it was related to the feeling that we had and related to what we saw in the reports. So this customer had acquired whole new companies in the past year, so their new priority was to reorganize themselves. Translation was no longer a priority at that time. And also, there were a lot of new employees that were not introduced to Keylingo as the language service provider. And there were so many new employees that we weren't aware of this big change. So when we worked on the report of the contact person, we realized that the contact persons from 2020, for example, were totally different from the contact persons from 2022. And then we worked together internally to create another action plan that's related to the account update. So the first thing we want to do is to update the contact persons list to make sure that we have contact with the main person in each department. And we want to work together on the centralization of the translation services, because not only the customer was satisfied with our services, but they also wanted to send all of their requests to us. But they didn't know how to do that because there were a lot of new employees that wasn't aware of our services. And finally, the last task was to follow up each month with this customer and see how everything was going and if they needed something else from our end. So all the information that we were able to get from Plunet helped us to not only understand our customer behavior and their trends, but also to assist them with their new challenges and their new needs that were totally different from the needs that they used to have before. And in our experience, this was crucial to understand our customer behavior, but we also believe that it is importantly crucial to understand the challenges and the needs of our operations team, because they are the backbone of any organization. They make sure that everything runs smoothly, that everything works every single day. So what we wanted to do was to track the time invested in manual tasks. Because analyzing these extra time invested in manual tasks or in repetitive tasks would allow us to identify room for improvement, to improve processes, to maybe improve the distribution of the workload. So we started by creating 2 PM jobs, project management jobs, that are related to the PM check stage. So as part of our regular process, our project managers review the files before delivering them to the customer. So this task usually takes a couple of minutes, but when it takes more than a couple of minutes, we want to understand the nature. Why is it taking more than a couple of minutes, and what can we do about it? So the PM check standard is just what I explained, but we want the team to register those exceptions. So when a PM check takes them more than 30 minutes, when it takes them a few hours. So that means that something is going on and we have room for improvement. And then the PM check issues is related to the extra time that arises from our team finding issues with the files and having to ask the resources to fix them. So for example, if we notice that our PMs are spending too much time in the PM check issues, then we need to work with the resources. Maybe create glossaries, update the style guide, try to work on an action plan that would help us reduce this extra time. So tracking this PM check stage, first of all, help us to identify which is the nature, then to create an action plan, and finally to measure whether the action plan was efficient or not. Because if we see that after a few months, the team is still spending so many hours in the same task, then maybe the action plan was not efficient. And apart from tracking this specific task, we also wanted to track the manual task that can be automated, or the repetitive task or the redundant task. So what we did was to start using the timesheet that we were not using before, and we asked the team to register all these manual tasks, that they were taking them longer, or maybe these are small tasks, but they are redundant and repetitive. So in the first months that we started registering, we noticed that some of the team members were spending more than 30 minutes in one single task, for example. We also noticed that there were more than 150 hours spent on this manual task, and there were more than 80 activities registered, such as TM update, workaround analysis, quote creation. So we started to work together internally with the technology and innovation team to see in which areas we can improve this to reduce the amount of hours spent on the manual task. And the ultimate goal is fully automation, but in the meantime, while we work on that, we wanted to encourage the team to start using features on Plunet that would help us reduce this time. So, for example, the team started to use the quote and order templates for all those projects that were repetitive, that always had the same instruction, the same languages, the same properties. The same for the workflow templates. We started to use the workflow templates, and as we work with other LSP as well, this helped us to already select the resources that we need to select for each customer, for example. The email templates, we also set up a lot of email templates that are saving us time. And the most important decision we took was to activate the customer portal. So in the first quarter of this year, we already had 10% of the projects requested via the customer portal, which meant that more than 400 emails were automatically written using the email template. So if per project we have 4 or 5 emails that are sent, then all of these emails are automatically written with email templates. Then the source documents are being uploaded by our customers to the customer portal, not by our team. And the same happens with the information fields in the quote and in the orders, such as the languages, the project details. This is everything filled by the customer on their end and not by our team. So far, with just having 10% of our customers in the customer portal, we already gained 36 hours of productivity in the first quarter of the year. And you may see this number, the 10%, and think, well, you are not piloting the Spaceship yet, are you? And that's true. We are not there yet, but we took the most important step, that was leaving the backseat and becoming active users. Becoming active users of Plunet was eye-opening for Keylingo, and even though we took small steps until now, they have tremendously improved our whole processes. And as Mark Twain said once, who, by the way, was not only a writer but also a pilot, the secret to getting ahead is getting started. Thank you.